Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Special Committee on Health, Opportunity, Prosperity, and Education, also known as HOPE, for Wednesday, April 23rd. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Juan Pichardo,
Present.
Vice Chairwoman Shelley Peterson. Present. Councilor Sue Endergua, she's absent. Councilor Justin Reyes.
Present.
Councilor Miguel Sanchez.
Present.
We have 4 present, 1 absent. We have a quorum.
So before us, we have the agenda, and we're going to first make a motion to substitute on the first item.
Second.
The motion has been made by Councilwoman Peterson, second by Councilman Sanchez. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstention, any nays? The motion carries. Before us is the item, which is an ordinance amending chapter 13, housing code of the Providence Code of Ordinance to add article 10, provision of algorithmic rent setting devices. Before us, the sponsor of the ordinance will not be with us, and that was President Rachel Miller, but we have our staff present to speak and present the ordinance before us. You may.
Good evening, everybody. Jim Rose, Chief of Staff for the City Council. Council President, who introduced the ordinance, as the chair stated, wishes she could be here this evening. Unfortunately, she's dealing with a family emergency out of town, and so Aaron and I, Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, will present it on her behalf. I'll kind of set the scene, what we're talking about, how we got here, and then Aaron will be here to answer policy specifics as he leads the policy department. Rent setting software algorithms like RealPage, which is the predominant one controlling over 80% of the market, exist for one singular reason. That is to boost profits by colluding to artificially increase rent. Of course, higher rent means more evictions, more displacement. Rent setting algorithms have this purpose according to the people who create them. This is their stated purpose, their selling point to landlords. It's in their materials, on their websites, how they promote it at conventions, to their clients. Their own website, RealPage's own website, boasts, find out how YieldStar, which is the name of the software, can help you outperform the market by 3 to 7%. In Nashville, a RealPage executive was asked whether their rent setting algorithm had any effect on the 14.5% rent increases that people were seeing. And that executive responded by saying, "I think it's driving, quite honestly." As a property manager, he continued, "Very few of us would be willing to actually raise rents double-digit within a single month by doing it manually." So how does this work? They use a mix of sensitive proprietary data sets and publicly available information to formulaically make working people, renters, pay more. Private information, because landlords share data regarding their properties with RealPage. That's how they sign up. They share their data, the rents, their occupancy levels, their vacancy levels, details about their square footage of the properties they manage, things that we wouldn't know. And then RealPage, through their software, compiles that information from all the landlords in the area who are clients, and they combine that with publicly available data, and then they recommend rent levels and occupancy levels that maximize profits, not for that one person who's plugging it in, but that maximize the profits for all the landlords in the region who are clients. I mentioned occupancy rates. So sometimes what the software will recommend is artificial vacancy, otherwise letting available units sit open. If the algorithm finds that driving down the available supply will drive up the revenue, then it'll give that recommendation. This obviously comes in a housing crisis where supply is a big part of the problem, something that we talk about constantly. We already have extremely high demand and limited supply. And that's the context with which they're both artificially driving up rents and sometimes vacancies. There's a term for this, I'm sure that everyone is familiar with. It's price fixing, which is already illegal. There's lots of law on this. But what's happening here is instead of getting all in a room together and deciding on what rent prices they should set, which would be clearly illegal, I think everyone would agree that's illegal. They use an algorithm which sits in the center. It's a workaround. Rather than getting together, an algorithm that takes all their information, spits back out what rent they should set. This has led senators like Amy Klobuchar, Dick Durbin, Ron Wyden, Cory Booker, and other Democrats, but from across the ideological spectrum, to call this a cartel. It has led to the Biden Justice Department file a lawsuit, an antitrust lawsuit against Providence. Among the landlords that were named in that lawsuit are Cushman and Wakefield and Willow Bridge, both of which own property in Providence. This ordinance would close that loophole, prohibiting the use of algorithmic devices for the purpose of setting and raising rents on residential dwelling units in Providence.
Yeah, I think June did a marvelous job of breaking down the background as to how we got.
And just for the record, if you could just introduce yourself.
Yeah,
No
absolutely,
need to-
sorry. Aaron used to Gardner, Deputy Chief of Staff for policy for the council. So yeah, as I mentioned, June did a great job breaking this down. There was just a few snippets of things that I did want to add. So I'm sure all of you are probably familiar with the report from Redfin. I think it was from February of this year, and it showed that they surveyed the 44 largest metro areas in the country. Providence usually is around the 35th or the 40th, depending on which census it is. And basically they found that Providence is the least affordable market for renters. And they also reported that so HUD guidelines say that folks shouldn't be spending any more than 30% of their income on housing. But basically, we need to earn $85,000 as a single person to afford the average rent prices that are here in the city, and that's like somewhat of a wild number. And then so another thing from rent.com, and this was from March 23 to March 24, the rents here in Providence rose up 16%. I think the only municipality around the country that was higher was Cincinnati. That's something that needs to be put out there. While this isn't this is by no means a silver bullet that's going to solve the affordable housing crisis or the housing crisis here in Providence. It's one tool in the tool shed that we can use to address it. So I want to say that, and then there is a slight amendment that's in front of you from the original version to this one that you see. The only changes that you see, they're very simple and straightforward. One piece is to clearly outline the use of these devices as being part of the prohibited conduct in D. We just wanted to make that extremely clear. Also, one change that came as a recommendation from the law department, and you'll see that's in section, I'll talk about this a little bit more in a second, but the enforcement part, 1371, originally we wanted the submissions that would go to the solicitor's office, which may be transferred to the attorney general's office, to be confidential. But we took that language out because we recognize that it's just kind of impossible to keep it confidential from coming to the city, to the attorney general's office if they decide to, move on the issue. And then also after discussing with some of the state courts and with the law department, we just decided to pull out the language that spoke to a specific private action that an individual could bring to the courts, because we thought it was, better for it to be something that was controlled entirely, within the city. So with that said, I'll just say that this ordinance ultimately, has two parts to consider. So one is that it allows, the city through our solicitor to receive these submissions regarding these alleged violations. And the solicitor may, at his or her discretion, forward these to the attorney general. And it should be known that this activity is already, unlawful under state law. It's the Unfair Trade Practice and Consumer Protection Act. It actually outlines, all of these issues in price fixing. But it's just specifically in state law, it's the attorney general who can move, these actions. No one else can but the Attorney General. So one piece was for us to signal to the Attorney General that we had this information, please move on this if you deem this actionable. And then the second piece is, you see language that speaks to, the solicitor may, move, action in a court of competent jurisdiction. And basically what that's going to do is gives the city, the authority to move forward. But this is going to take a lot of the, discussion and collaboration with the law department to decide exactly, how we can move forward with this, because we do have concerns with, staffing. Does the law department have the prosecutors that can do so? That's something that we need to work on, like moving forward. But this allows the city to potentially bring these claims in a court of competent jurisdiction. And after discussion, we see that as likely being the municipal court, but there is state law that speaks to district courts, enforcing municipal ordinances. And there's also the housing court to consider. That's a third. I don't think that's likely, but we still need to figure that part out in the next step. So I think those are the main things that I did want to share, except for I'll say one last thing. It's like, when it does come to the potential for our solicitor to bring this in, court of competent jurisdiction, we've also added language which allows the city to basically prosecute to the, highest level allowed, in state law. And we all know that to be $500 a day, per violation. And again, it is deferential to the solicitor and how they want to move forward. But that is the background in terms of like the structure of what this ordinance does.
For the committee, do you have any questions? Ask now, and then also just to let everyone know, as I said, that for this committee, the chair, I will take testimony from the public. So, all right. If you have any questions now, feel free. Councilwoman Peterson.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys putting this in front of us. I actually just have a question in terms of do we have any idea if this is already currently being used in the city of Providence?
Yeah, I don't have direct evidence of this actually being used here in the city of Providence. There is direct evidence that this has been being used in other states, especially in the West Coast. We did? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All right. If we do, then I would, if it's okay, Councilman, I'd like the Deputy Director of Policy to join us at the table. That was me.
Okay, great. I can just quickly join, sort of,
State your name.
Miguel Young, Deputy Director of Policy. Hi, everyone. Nice revelation Brandon and I had, as we were doing some research just today, is we found embedded in a sort of fact sheet within the Real Page website, a link that you can search for properties that use Real Pages. It's, albeit potentially just cursory, but within it, we put in Providence, Rhode Island, and I didn't count these, but some recognizable names here. This is on the Real Page site. We've got 125 Wigington, 257 there, Beneficent House, Center Place, the Nightingale, Four Seasons. It's about 26 or so properties. We can do a much deeper sort of analysis, break this down, share this table. But just looking at this, in my understanding of the city, these are all big properties with a lot of units.
Yeah.
So if they're using it, this is actually influencing a lot of units all at once.
I'd be curious to see it as we expand into the different wards, kind of like, we, I think, all know who the larger developments are, or the developers are in our areas, and I'd be really curious to see if some of that is applied, because I know what my median rent is in my particular ward, but it's not necessarily, it's unaffordable, that's just the reality. The other question that I have is, if you will, one more question. Is the amendment that you made. It's section B. The property owner shall use described contractor pay for. How do we verify that how will we know that somebody is doing that, or how is that going to be cross-referenced, checked, verified?
At the end of the day, my answer would be that is going to be like, it is a problem always in terms of like, enforcement. When you're gonna move these things in court, you have to have the, evidence and history that, the device is being used, and that's just something that, we hope to, work with the law department on seeing like, what their discovery, process would be like. But legally, it's all about, discovery and getting these things like ready as evidence. So this just basically goes into like, let's say the term that I'm looking for, just overall procedure, like, it's just gonna be tied up with that, but it's not easy.
Any other questions? Councilman Sanchez.
Not necessarily questions, just comments. Thank you, gentlemen, for presenting on behalf of Council President. This is a policy that I think we're pretty late on to the game. We've seen a few major cities across the country already enact certain prohibitions on this technology. As we, are talking about the housing crisis, I think this is just one tool to try to level the quote unquote playing field. It's just being in these tables can be such a room full of mixed emotions, like my counselor colleague Royce was speaking earlier with our friends from Madison Church, like that is like the most dire consequence of the choices that we make around this table, the elected officials of the State House make, is that those service providers and folks that are on the front lines, working with folks that we're leaving behind every single day, tying those to the policy decisions that we make. And I think by moving forward with this piece of legislation, I think it helps us as a council body that has tried to prioritize housing affordability for our city's residents, try to open up more units as much as possible. It makes sense, like a mom and pop landlord, they have, 5, 6 units, like in their mind and in their books, they do their accounting on a daily basis. They can't afford to leave a unit vacant, but another building that has 200 units, if the algorithm is telling them to leave 3 or 4 units vacant to drive up the cost on the other available units, and they're gonna make that business decision. And I've always been in strong opposition of creating lanes that favor profit over the people of our city. Yeah, so I do thank you all very much for presenting on this behalf. Like the ordinance I introduced a couple months ago regarding the prohibition on finding people for simply sleeping outside of public property. I think this is a bare minimum, common sense, people-centered piece of legislation. So I thank you all very much, and hopefully we can get this out of committee and pass on the floor soon.
Thank you. Can I make one comment, just for the cities that have already passed this? Obviously, there's a lot of municipalities that have introduced it, but on books already, San Francisco, Berkeley, Minneapolis, and Philadelphia have all passed this ordinance, and they're in effect now. Just wanted to share that.
Councilman Rose.
Thank you, Chair. I just, I think this is also common sense. I'm frightened and disheartened by this like level of just greed, corporate greed. I'm having many thoughts about how, I think we know that 26 properties at least have used this software. We don't know how many more, and I'm imagining it's a lot more than that. And what's happening is like, when we talk about corporate collusion, this is like exactly that. And it's not happening in like smoky rooms. It's happening via software, it's happening quietly, and through a machine-driven way behind the screen. And that's very scary. I also, when we talk about, sometimes we have landlords come before us and they start talking about the free market, that invisible hand. And how I see this issue from my perspective is RealPage has taken that invisible hand of the free market and become sort of like the visible thumb, a very visible thumb that is pressing against the scale, pressing against the market. So we don't have a true free market right now. I don't think we ever did in real estate. But with systems like this, this feeling of let the free market do what it will do. Boy, is that undermined by this computer software program. So I just wanted to share that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you very much for your presentation. Do you stick around just in case there are other questions? If anyone would like to speak on it?
Sure.
Yeah.
I like to sleep. It's possible I'll fall in that, shake it out, first and watch. Funny feelings.
Well, you can speak standing up.
So, it's occasionally, I got like lots of people. Good evening, my name is Jeff Padua. I know most of you, for those of you who don't know who I was, a city solicitor for Jeff Dana. I was retained by RealPage. RealPage is a US software company that specializes in property management software. I had met with the chairman, Council President Aaron, just at the very end of last week, talking about this ordinance. And I didn't find out that it was on for a hearing until late this afternoon. If I had been given some time and some heads up when we recorded, I could have brought in representatives from RealPage, because there have been a lot of accusations without any proof, just talking. And I could have brought somebody in that has the information to respond and to refute these sort of baseless statements and allegations that were made. The high rents are due to supply and demand, not pricing algorithms. The tool is designed to maintain occupancy, not to inflate rents, not to cause vacancies, not to evict people. And again, even though I've been sitting here literally since 5:30 tonight, there's an amendment. Aaron and nobody else offered to show it to me. I haven't seen the amendment that was offered. That's a little disappointing, I have to say. I provided an amendment to Aaron, to Emily, and to the solicitor's office today, addressing the concerns that I'm gonna really raise for you. Which is, when you talk about price fixing, and you talk about monopolistic behavior, it's private information that 2 or more people are sharing. I say, hey, this is what I'm charging for this product, and you say, this is what I'm charging. Hey, let's charge the same, right? That's based on private, non-public information. This ordinance prohibits both public and non-public information. Public information that's available publicly. You're prohibiting the sharing of that information. I have to say that raises serious First Amendment issues. It stifles legitimate uses like real estate investment analysis, policy research, software innovation, and also impairs innovation and fair competition. So this ordinance, and I respectfully, I only heard of the amendments. I don't think they really address the issues that make this ordinance extremely vulnerable for constitutional challenge. I had addressed these in a proposed amendment, as I said, that I circulated, which would limit the scope to include only non-public information that is recent, 90 days. Why 90 days? If people are going to rent apartments, they don't care what the rent is a year ago. If they want to know what is it the last 90 days. So that's what I had proposed and suggested and circulated to some. And I would urge this committee to adopt the amendments that I proposed. I would urge you to take your time to discuss it with the solicitor's office and then to ultimately to amend it. And if this ordinance is amended to carve out so that it applies only to non-public information within the last 90 days, my clients will be amenable to that and they will go on. If it's not, very likely to see a challenge to the ordinance. And also last, the effective date, I would just ask that the effective date be pushed off for 60 days from passage, because it's gonna take them some time to unravel things and come into compliance. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Those are my comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walker. Any questions from the committee? Councilwoman Shelley Peterson.
Thank you. I actually do have a question for our deputy chief of staff, Aaron, if I could ask you just to.
Jeff, you can stay.
Yeah, please.
And then, and the question is towards our deputy chief of staff.
This has been presented to the solicitor's office, I'm assuming, and they've okayed these recommendations?
Yeah, so all of the changes and everything I did with collaboration with the law department, but one thing that they did also say, but I will preface this statement with this. You know, the language that is in the definitions that outlines, like, what an algorithm device is and all of that. There's arguments to say that there could be, like, a First Amendment issue there, with, taking away someone's right to actually be able to, use the data that's publicly available, and use it for whatever they like to. But that's the only issue that they saw. It's the only issue that I personally see, and I don't see that as the strongest legal issue. But that was there.
That didn't answer her question.
Excuse me,
Excuse me.
that could be possibly, but it's up to the person presenting the answer around it. So now we'll go back to you, Councilwoman, to see if she has any other question or further clarification. Thank you.
Thank you for the follow-up. But how do I preface this? I think that this is absolutely something that we should be doing. We should have done it ages ago, Councilman Sanchez said. My concern is one of the things that you had mentioned, Aaron, is that there's still, previously, you had mentioned something where there's still certain things that needed to be worked out with the solicitor's office.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to make sure that these are things that are going to be done before we pass this as a full council, because I don't necessarily, my hesitation is to have something that is not completely processed and vetted through the solicitor's office, to ensure that in the event that somebody says to us, hey, sorry, we're going to challenge this is completely ironclad for the city. And I wanna, that's important to me. Yeah.
Yeah, understood. My response would be, when I said that there are certain items that need to be ironed out with the solicitor's office, the only thing that still needs to be ironed out is the actual process for us in terms of moving actions in municipal court, on the local level for us. And that's the discussion in terms of, like, the attorneys that they have, the resources, and when they could potentially begin those things. But it doesn't, like, there's nothing related to that that's not workable in the ordinance. It's just that, do we have the resources to be able to do it? And which court are we gonna bring these in? Those are subsequent conversations that need to be had. But basically, I see this, and this ordinance, especially that language there, is giving the city the authority to move forward in these actions in the way that we best see fit. And that's why we have the language of court of competent jurisdiction, because there's arguments that it could go to district court, municipal court, et cetera.
Thank you. Any, yep, Council.
Sorry, just to push back a little bit, shouldn't that all be addressed before we submit for full passage on this? I'm just concerned that what we're doing sets us up for an immediate challenge when we haven't been able to clearly define how that's going to work yet. And I don't want it to. I want this to pass without any issues. That's my whole, the whole basis.
A potential challenge would be tied to the, any First Amendment issues with actual use of the software. There's no challenge that would be associated with, the solicitor having the authority to move forward in court of competent jurisdiction. That's the language that's used. Just it's a legal term that is used that basically says whichever court you know, you can legally bring it in, you have the authority to bring it there. That's the bad thing too.
June.
June wants to.
Yeah, just wanted to add to that and also clarify a couple
Thank
points
you.
on this, so just to add to that. When those items are worked out, they wouldn't belong in the ordinance anyways, the processes, that would just be internal for the law department. So that'll come down the line, but the law department has had this for significant amounts of time and we took all their substantive feedback. I think this is a law that has been passed in other places that is being challenged in court and hasn't been litigated. And so there would never get to a point until litigation happens where someone could say with 100% certainty on what could happen, but we integrated all their substantive concerns. So that's all in what's in front of you today. And I spoke with the city solicitor today and he said they are comfortable with us passing this and that they would be ready to defend this ordinance in court, as is their responsibility, of course, if that's what it came to.
Thank you,
I appreciate it, thank you.
thank you. Councilman Sanchez.
Thank you. Just to make a quick comment in terms of implementation, I think it's actually a really good time, where if they do have any staffing concerns, they can get brought up. Hopefully in the next 6 weeks, we are working on the budget. I did see in the mayor's proposal that he is, defunding a vacant assistant solicitor position. So, I mean, if that needs to get funded to be able to implement this, then I would urge the policy team to work with the solicitor's office as soon as possible to address that possible concern.
Thank you for that.
Councilman Royce.
I'm actually gonna yield to my colleague here.
No, you can go first, yeah.
I just,
Councilman Royce.
what did, I'm sorry, was it Jeff? Was it?
Yeah.
Jeff, nice to see you again. I just wanna kind of like pick your brain about this idea of like sort of this would infringe on sort of free speech. Can you explain what part of this process qualifies as free speech?
I'm not going to get into what our probable challenges are. I would just say that the version that I submitted with the amendments would address the First Amendment concerns. That is narrowing the scope to non-public information within the last 90 days.
In the film, Chair, if you don't mind me to.
Yeah.
How would keeping sort of axing sort of the private sharing? How would the keeping just solely the public aspect of it meet the free speech standard?
Yeah, again, I'm not gonna get into the legal strategy.
Okay.
I'm just representing that the proposed amendments that we offered, narrowing the scope to non-public information in the last 90 days would address the First Amendment concerns that we have.
You have a follow?
Yeah, I guess I'm struggling with not revealing what those concerns are. You know, I guess it's a thought as a statement.
Yeah.
And I guess my other just out loud thought is, whose speech is this? Is it Real Page's speech? Is it the landlord's speech? You know, I just, anyways,
You're making statements and
yeah.
people may have comments or answers to it. You certainly have the right to ask those questions, right? So with that said, thank you. Councilwoman Anderson.
Thank you, Chairman, and I apologize to my colleagues and folks that I was late. I came straight from work and I drove very safely, but ran up the stairs, so I was a little winded when I got here. I was like, I'm coming back. I guess I have 2 questions for you, Mr. Padua. It's good to see you, and sorry again, I came in the middle of your testimony. One is, you mentioned section 2, you want the ordinance to be effective within 60 or after 60 days of passage. Can you describe what needs to be unwound about their use of these services?
I don't know the specifics. Again, if I had time, I would have brought somebody here who could answer that. I was talking to my client today. They told me that they need 60 days to comply. I don't know what the logistics are.
Okay. And then the other question I have is, you've referenced some language that you provided. Did you bring that for us today as
I brought
testimony?
several copies. Not enough for everybody, and I would definitely appreciate a copy of the amendment that was offered, since I still haven't offered to you.
It's submitted to the clerk.
Oh, yeah.
There's the. Any other questions?
Nope, that is it. He was trying.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you have any further?
I have nothing further. Thank you for hearing me, and I appreciate all the council people's efforts. I know it. Late nights, the dedication to the community. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I just wanted to, I do have, I have two questions that, Councilwoman Underwood asked in terms of the, I say, when it does come effective the date. You asked for, what was it, 90 days, 60 days? And what was the significance of that, you know, in terms of, and she asked that question.
Yeah, I think that, I don't know, I think they have to pull it down, I don't know what the details are, they said they need a little time.
Well, I certainly understand, and we will provide a testimony in their perspective, and I thank you for reaching out to the sponsor and also to us and as a department to provide more information. While the ordinance was introduced in committee, and it was actually posted, I believe, on Monday. So I just want to make clear that it was posted within the time frame of posting bills. As you, and any other that may be watching going further, is that when things are posted on, or introduced as an ordinance, we got to be vigilant on how these things come up, whether it's here at the municipal level or at the state level, where they provide, you know, a couple of hours and, well, a couple of days to hear. So I certainly take your comment, but I just wanted to let you know that we've had enough notice to with the posting and so forth. So with that said, I know that the clerk was also providing a copy of your amendment.
She
Not
wants to
sure
make
if,
copies. She wants to make copies.
if members want to take a few minutes to review, is the only bill that we have. But we are going to be taking action on this ordinance. And thank you very much, Mr. Vice. And just to.
Yeah,
he brought it up.
Online version of that.
I'm sorry, you're good. And just like in anything, as you know, members, when we pass things out of committee, if the sponsor or other conversations take place in terms, there's opportunities to provide some type of amendment on the floor, or send it back to committee. That's part of the process, so.
And Chairman, just to clarify, the sponsor is Council President Miller.
Yes. Everybody? So, question to Aaron and June. Do you have a copy of this too? Have you seen this before? Have you had any conversation with Mr. Or others?
I reviewed it, but I didn't have any subsequent conversations about it, but I did see the amendment that Mr. Paulo shared.
Okay, prior to, being, you know, the substitute.
The substitute that we had drafted, you know, the direction of some feedback in the law department, that we finished that over a month ago, so that was finished before, I saw, Jeff's amendment here.
We received that this afternoon.
This
afternoon, that's when we received the
Yes.
amendment from your page.
Okay.
Yeah, we got this to that.
If you like a question.
Just to clarify, Real Big sent it today?
Yes,
Oh,
through the
okay.
lobbyist.
Okay, thank you.
I think, from my perspective, one of the things that we sort of consider, as we move it to the floor, is the timetable, when to take effect. But, we also know that this body, as a city council, tackling the issues of affordable housing and especially the rent and, I just reading today, and as Aaron indicated that, you need about $85,000 to, afford, the average rent here and how challenging it is. And with that said, we also know that many people, and municipalities and government were behind the 8 ball, when it comes to technology and using, technology to our advantage. Many of the, companies and those who are funding entrepreneurs that are very savvy with computers are way ahead of all of us, and we're just catching up to a lot of these things. And I'm just pleased that we have a young cohort of all of us in the table, dealing with technology and also with these type of issues. If no one else has any other comments or questions, I would entertain a motion to passage. Is there a motion? The motion has been, the motion,
As amended.
the motion as amended has been moved
Aaron's amendment.
with, huh?
With Aaron's amendment.
Aaron with their policy.
You just want to say
No,
your
no,
movement again?
Yeah, okay,
It's what's before us.
Yeah.
It's an amendment.
yes.
Yes, sir. The motion. The motion was made by Councilwoman Shelley Peterson for passage of the bill that's before us as amended, and it has been seconded by Councilman Sanchez and Councilwoman Underwood. Any further
I
discussion?
heard it.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstention? Any nays? The motion passes. The bill moves forward. Seeing that there's no other business, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second motion has been moved and second, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The ayes